Gareth, welcome to the Democratizing SEO podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. It's Monday. The sun is shining. My team are hard at work. What's not to like?
It's very, very hot in London, which is not a complaint. It's a good statement. I've had to
Well, I'm
essentially.
I'm a couple of 100 miles north from you in Manchester, and
uh,
as you can see, the sun is shining outside my small window in my basement. So maybe at some point today, I'll get to see the sunshine.
Indeed, that'll be awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I wanted to have a conversation around communicating SEO value to C-suite, specifically a CEO. And as someone who's been in the industry for a very long time, someone who's also a C-suite member, I thought you'd be an excellent person to speak with on this topic. So I think we're going to have a brilliant conversation. To start off with, you've been in SEO for a very long time. How has it evolved, in your opinion, over the years?
Yeah, I think SEO is very much more a mainstream marketing channel these days. I think when I started sometime around 2007, 2008, it wasn't even on the radar of a lot of C-suite, although Google was picking up traction or had traction in 2007, 2008. I think that we're going back to a world where we had ten links on a
Yeah.
page. There was no rich information. There was no brand SERP functionality. It was for business listings or for branded search. It was just 10 links on a page. So I don't think it was on people's radar as much. I think that PPC was still getting the majority of the budgets, probably
Mhm.
due to the marketing efforts by the search engines themselves, pushing their paid platforms. Naturally, that's how they get paid.
Mhm.
And I think that as an industry, we've just massively matured. We're a lot more visible across departments these days. If you think about the learnings that we've been on over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, as somebody that runs software companies that I pay people who spend half their life answering the same questions over and over again from support requests. Whereas now, if we can get all our content indexed on Google and the answers can exist for people to help themselves, I think we're just becoming more and more used to the way of interacting with search engines as well. So
Mhm.
I I just think that the level of detail that's understood by non-techies, I suppose, or even non-PRs is much higher. As an How's a nice way of saying this? The old guard C-suite start to retire,
Mhm.
which means that the next generation of C-suite that come through are probably a little bit more internet first
Yeah.
versus the 20 years ago.
Mm. Do you think search overall is for the better now, or do you think it's for the worse?
There's a question. I think in terms of running an agency, it's a lot harder, but also a lot better. So we actually have to
Mm.
market our clients these days. Whereas if we were to go back to sort of pre 2012 and pre the Penguin update, if people are still even thinking about stuff like that, SEO was very much sort of automated people spamming the internet effectively. And maybe ChatGPT is going to bring back the content spamming side of the internet, because there is a lot of low quality content being produced again these days. But yeah, I think it's better now. Like the options we have via things like structured markup and schema, and the ability to steal more screen real estate through content and code. Yeah, I think that I'm 15, 16 years into this career, and I'm still learning every day. So
Mm.
I personally, I love it. There's no other job for me.
Yeah, it's one of those industries that keeps expanding. I think the more comprehensive it gets, the better it gets. It's harder now, definitely harder now to rank for targeted terms. But I think the overall expansion of it and the comprehensiveness of it is a beautiful thing. Now, I'm sure you've worked with MDs, CEOs, members of the C-suite over the years, right? What would you say their impression of SEO is overall?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if I can just caveat that not all C-suite are the same.
Sure.
Some CEOs will have a greater understanding of the minutiae of SEO
Hmm.
versus others. I think that in the old days, we say old days like it was 50 years ago. I mean, it could be 5 or 6 years ago. I think a lot of the time SEOs were associated with almost like the snake oil, the smoke and mirrors of SEO, where there were a lot of low quality agencies out there targeting business owners and CEOs, COOs, even CFOs, selling them the dream of ranking number one on Google. And I think that led to a lot of distrust within the industry as a whole. And again, probably pushed budgets back towards PPC, where it's almost a semi-guaranteed return on investment versus SEO, which is playing chess and hopefully we'll win tomorrow. I do think, though, that with the greater education that's out there and the fact that we are seeing more SEO talks at more generic business conferences as well these days, I think that the C-suite of today are very much aware of their personal branding more than maybe in the past, which again, as a fellow brand SERP guy, is a massive thing, really. And obviously, a lot of C-suite do switch jobs, so getting their search presence looking good is something that should most definitely be part of a C-suite's personal development plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. I think there was a stage where SEOs and even marketers, digital marketers overall, were trying to convince businesses to go online, right? Digital wasn't a thing for a lot of businesses and a lot of C-suite members of previous years. Whereas now, pretty much every business is online, and it's a case of, okay, how is budget allocated? Where do I spend money in order to get traction? And I find that SEOs, the way we communicate is not as clear cut as a lot of business leaders expect, should I say. With PPC, paid media, it's very simple. You pay this much, you get X amount back, and it's very direct. Whereas SEO, it's almost like a maybe, sort of, yes, but it's so there are so many caveats. What do you think SEOs can do to improve the way we communicate with business leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that a lot of business leaders are focused more on the paid media because traditionally you buy media. Now, whether that's in newspapers, whether that's on radio, whether that's on TV, I think the business model is a lot more understood. Whereas with SEO, as I say, we're playing chess, and hopefully in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, depending on where you are on your growth visibility curve, maybe there'll be a return, maybe there won't. I am C-suite. I understand the risks. Does the C-suite in a non-digital agency understand the risks? And you are right that digital didn't used to be such a prominent channel. But one thing that I do think we always need to factor in, and what many of us forget because we're so built into this world of digital, is that not all business is done online. Like there is still a lot of business that's done hand to hand, face to face. There are still sales reps driving up and down the motorways of the country, visiting customers and doing business. Where I think that we as an SEO industry, whether we're agency side or, as with your audience, predominantly in-house, to try and prove that value and get across what it actually involves is to show the depth of true SEO. So as I mentioned before, we have support requests for our software where the answer exists on Google. So if we can get across the cost savings in customer service, if we can reduce the number of calls that are coming in because we've published the information, and most importantly, that information is findable, because it's all very well publishing information, but if no one can still find it, then you're not going to eliminate those support requests or those questions. And even for the businesses that are doing a lot of offline business, you still have to have that digital presence. The number of times I've been sat in a meeting with someone, and as soon as they've left, the first thing I do is Google them. Or even before the meeting, I might Google them. It could be that we're meeting in a coffee shop and I don't know what you look like. So I just need to work out who should my eyes be scouring the room for. But I do believe it is educating your peers, and not just your peers upper level, but your peers across other departments on the benefits of having your business information and content indexed and visible. And I think that with a lot of us SEOs, and again, I still consider myself an SEO, despite the fact I don't really work too much in the trenches these days. SEO is the center of our world. It's not necessarily the center of everyone else's world. So I think there has to be an acceptance to a certain level that just because you want something doing doesn't mean that everybody wants that doing. An example that I can think of where we were working with a UK corporate where another team kept changing our homepage H1 tag because what they wanted correlated with the TV ad campaign they were using. Right. But nobody was thinking about our visibility for certain £50 plus per click keywords. And somebody wasn't consulting with the digital team before making that change on the website. So I think with cross-departmental education and understanding, there's definitely a lack of understanding. Or from what I see, as I say, I caveated this with not everybody's the same. Hopefully, I'm sure all your audience are all very digitally savvy and everybody knows what they're doing. But it is just trying to get people to understand why. They don't always need to understand the how. And I wouldn't bore people with the how we're going to do it. But if they understand the risk of making a decision, then at least they might at least drop you a Slack message to let you know that they're going to do this 10 minutes before they do. So you've got half a chance of trying to jump in before they ruin your reports for next month.
Yeah. I've been thinking of why non-SEOs don't necessarily correlate with SEO wants and needs. And I think I came up with the SEO language being an issue, because I think SEOs, we speak quote unquote the SEO language, and with fellow SEOs it's no problem, right? Not an issue at all. But we speak that language to non-SEOs, almost expecting them to understand the language that we're speaking. Do you think we need to adapt our language to to appropriate it to who we're communicating to or with?
Most definitely. We work in a world of acronyms. My client CEOs don't care what schema is. But what they do care about is that we're taking more real estate on the screen. So I think if we were to focus on, as SEOs or even as digital marketers, because quite often the SEO person in-house is wearing a few different hats. But I think if we try and focus more on the output of what we're trying to achieve rather than the granularity and the tasks that are required to get to that output, then you're going to get a much higher buy-in from your colleagues, because quite often we might have to take a little bit of their budget to do something as well. So again, it all comes down to money, and people don't want to share their budgets in different departments, especially when maybe they've already allocated most of it. But the big thing for me is getting across, again, the why we're doing stuff. Like if I find that if my customers or my colleagues understand why we're asking for this, especially at the risk of alienating myself with every developer out there, I still think that there's an education piece to do with developers as to why we want you to wrap this FAQ section in schema. And I often find that it's like a game of show and tell at school, where if I can show them that my competitors have implemented FAQ schema and show how much real estate they're taking, if I can show my my CEO or my COO, this is position zero. Like, they don't know what P0 is. Rich snippets. What's all these words that we're using to these people? Whereas if you were to just go to that C-suite and say, well, let's pretend we're a user, and we put into Google, why do I need product X? And we can see a competitor taking the space above the adverts, because quite often people understand the adverts these days, but then they see that there's this content above the adverts. Well, that's what we're trying to achieve. And I believe that by showing them and explaining the output rather than the inputs required to get there, you'll have a greater buy-in in terms of getting stuff done of people whose job. So again, just because your job is dependent on SEO successes doesn't make that my problem. Like, if I can try and get across to you, this benefits you as well, you're going to look good. If I can help elevate your ego internally, but also your presence externally within the organization, then hopefully you'll do what I'm asking you to do with more efficiency and efficacy.
A couple of weeks ago, I'm going to go into a tangent, but I'll relate this to a question.
I like tangents. Don't worry about that.
A couple of weeks ago, I was playing around with Final Cut Pro, essentially to see how I can improve the editing of the podcast. But after a while, I thought to myself, this is a steep learning curve. And I found it to be a bit too much for what I needed. So I reverted back to the previous program I was using, and I already had my ways of working, my workflow already nailed down on that program, and it was working for me. So I didn't need to change it and go through that steep learning curve, right? You mentioned SEO education moments ago, and I find that, non-SEOs need a certain level of understanding of SEO to help SEO performance, right? But thinking of it from a C-suite member, I can imagine it being a turnoff for them, thinking, well, I have SEOs. Why do I need to learn? Why do I need to go through this huge challenge of learning SEO? I have no interest in being being an SEO. And, it's the whole idea of SEO. It's still very much seen as a black magic type of industry. I really don't want to go through the hassle of doing that, of learning it. Do you reckon that that is an element of why non-SEOs stay away from learning and understanding SEO, at least to a certain level where they have a better awareness of it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to cause and effect. A lot of C-suite make budgeting decisions without knowing the full picture. And I think we've all been on the opposite end of that pencil, shall we say, in
Yeah.
that budgets get cut by people that don't understand why we need the budget. And I think it's our job to make sure that they have the data points they need to give a top level of understanding. And I think sometimes, like I said, again, I don't want to alienate myself in my own industry either, but SEO is the center of our world. It's not the center of the CEO's world. And if you're coming to him or her with technical jargon, if you're taking more than 3 minutes to explain it to me, you've lost me. So I think we're all guilty of look, when I'm out with all my friends that work in SEO, we can waffle on for hours about the things we're doing and the crawl budgets and indexing, and I don't care. Like that, I want to know what does it mean? What am I going to get back? I mean, a lot of the time, obviously, the CEO is making commercially focused decisions. It's all very well you telling me that you need £10,000 to do X, but what does it mean for my bottom line? Like, when am I going to get my ROI on this? When am I going to see the fruits of your labors? And obviously, we know it takes time. We know it's not guaranteed. We know it's a race to the top. And every time I send you a green report, somebody's having to send a red report because I've overtaken them. And then they're going to apply more budget. I think that the linguistics that we use are so important in terms of getting people to buy into what we're trying to achieve. And don't talk techie to non-techies is the crux of it. Don't tell people, oh, I need X amount of time to do this code, or I need to implement this. Look at this cool screen. Look, our schema code's been validated. Doesn't mean anything to them. Whereas if you can, a lot of the time, and this works for me personally, if I can show them something that a competitor is doing better than us, that usually incites is it passion? Is it anger? To make that decision and understand what we're trying to achieve. Like, hey, Mr. CEO, let's pretend we're the customer. Let's search for something related to the goods and services we're trying to sell online. Look, we're not there. But look, competitor A is there, and there. Wouldn't you like us to be there? And I think sometimes because they're not necessarily understanding what they're buying or what they're assigning budget to, I think that the emphasis is really on trying to get that plain speak explanation as to what the end goal is over. And like I say, I'm time poor. I have so much to do in a day. I haven't got all day for you to explain to me what you're trying to do. Just give me a TLDR.
Yeah.
And I think if we can all start to talk a little bit in TLDR to C-suite, they're just going to understand it more.
Of course, the bottom line, right, comes down to revenue. And this notoriously is an area that SEOs stay away from. I even know one or two agencies that tend not to touch revenue at all. They just go up to traffic and essentially say that's the end of SEO's job, right? Which I do not agree with, but that's their business. Now, what can SEOs do to show value, putting aside revenue as a KPI?
So, I mean, I do agree with you that SEO should be involved in the revenue conversation. Otherwise, why are we doing it? To stay on the side of my non-commercial SEO friends, I often use the analogy that we're on holiday, we're on the strip where all the bars are. My job as an SEO is to get the customer into the bar. If you don't have enough bar staff, or your CRO isn't leading that person to buy a drink, or food, where does my job start and stop?
Yeah.
And we could argue that page speed, like if the door is opening really slowly, people might turn around and go back out onto the strip to the next marketer down. But at the same time, SEO is at its core a marketing discipline. It's not IT. I'm sure there are elements, and once we start looking at edge server architecture and things like this, then yes, it is maybe an IT department thing. But fundamentally, SEO is a marketing discipline. Fundamentally, marketing sits with sales, and it's about driving revenue. So I think that whilst there may be, in large teams, there may be technical SEOs that aren't too concerned with revenue because the output of their role doesn't directly contribute to revenue. I do think that they should still consider it because it's that attribution of revenue to SEO that frees up the budget next year, which gives them the fun tokens to go and buy new servers, to go and get more resource, to do experiments. So ultimately, none of us are charities. Even charities have a commercial objective, which is to raise money. So I think that if you are working in SEO and don't have one eye on the commercials, then you're probably holding back your career progression, because ultimately marketing activity, even branded marketing activity, does have to have an eventual attribution to new customer acquisition, or certainly encouraging second and third orders from existing customers. So, I mean, there are things that we can do to try and get non-commercial brains thinking commercially. And some people just don't like money, right? Or they don't like to talk about money, and they don't. I think it's a very British thing, to be honest, where we don't talk about money. But if you want that software license, if you want access to that new suite of tools, you need to justify to your line manager why you want it. Your line manager then probably has to go and justify to the CFO, to take everything back to C-suite, why we need $10,000 per year for product X, or we might need even just a few £100 per year for product Y. And if you can't put a commercial argument together, there's every chance that it's not going to be signed off. And you're going to be having to do your job with one arm behind your back. Yet it could have been 2 lines in that email or that internal pitch deck where you actually attributed it to some revenue, that everybody understands it now. Oh, so if we do that, we'll have a better understanding about this, which means that more customers will buy from us. Brilliant. Signed off. Done. So sometimes it is, again, comes down to, as we've said from the start, communication. And we are historically notoriously poor at communicating our value, SEOs. And I do think, though, that the current SEO winners are getting a lot more, or they are a lot more commercially focused, and they are able to communicate with a wider range of people within the organization why we're looking at doing what we're doing. And again, if you get this right, you're going to spread the awareness of SEO across all business functions. And then next year, your job will be much easier because people understand, and you've got the data to prove, look, I said this last year, now we've sold 300% more blue widgets. Now give me some more budget and we'll sell red and yellow widgets as well. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy quite often.
Yeah, totally agree. When I say the phrase, which I'm sure you've heard often, SEO is not performing. Let's say you have two hats on, your SEO hat and a business leader hat. Let's start with your business leader hat. What does that mean to you? SEO is not performing.
Yeah, so my first thing that springs to mind is why. Like, why is it not performing? What are we? I think sometimes because I have SEO knowledge, it's quite hard to eliminate some stuff. So, because the first thing that I would be thinking in my own business is, well, how are we doing versus the competition? Like, are we going faster or slower than them? Are we acquiring more links or less? Are we producing the same or better content? Mm-hmm. When people say SEO isn't performing, quite often the SEO will complain to the business leader that it's the fault of someone else. Because in a lot of our corporate clients, SEO aren't in charge of the website. So there's a whole web team.
Yeah.
The hosting or the server architecture sits with IT. Mm-hmm. So I'm complaining that my page speed is down, my waterfall graphs are looking terrible, and IT are dealing with something else. It's not a priority for them. Yeah. So when as a business leader, I hear things like SEO isn't performing, I'm assuming that we're not getting the traffic that we were promised last year. We're not getting the coverage that we were promised last year. And the first thing that I want to know is why. Is it, and I find, and I hate to say this, but 90% of the time it's a human issue. Like either the person that we require to make the change doesn't understand why. So again, which brings it back to that education piece. Yeah. If you're not explaining in the right language why you want someone to do something for you, it's not there. It just won't be done. Like we used to have quite a funny saying, which was, your incompetency isn't really my problem. So like, just because you've got your job wrong, like, I'm going to do everything I can to help you within the constraints of what I'm already doing. But I can't just drop everything, because I quite often, as a business leader, I could have 4 or 5 projects dashing around my head at any one time. Mm-hmm. And quite often, like a under-resourced tradesman, he or she that shouts the loudest gets my attention.
Right.
And if you're not getting across to me in language that I understand why we're not performing, I can't help you. Mm-hmm. And again, speak my language. Tell me, if we do this, we will probably see an increase in our visibility. What's visibility mean? If we do this, we're going to sell more stuff. Mm-hmm. Now you're talking my language.
Yeah.
Go and get them on the call. And again, I know we're going to keep saying this will be the most keyword dense of the podcast, but it's education and comms. Like not everybody speaks the cryptic code that SEOs do.
Mm. With education, I find across the industry that education is more so geared to SEOs or prospect SEOs. Why do you think we, as an industry, don't necessarily appropriate SEO education to non-SEOs, say members of the C-suite?
Time poor. I think it was Steve Jobs, I think, quoted, obviously a few years ago now, saying, I employ smart people to tell me what to do, not for me to tell them what to do, or something similar. A lot of the time, it's not my problem. I guess it's probably terrible linguistics, that. But I'm fighting fires over here. This is your job over here.
Yeah.
Yes, I need to know what you're doing, but do I need to be bogged down in the detail? And this is where it comes back to that show and tell thing, really. Like, I know we do a lot of digital PR and link building. Your traditional link building report, so link building and digital PR tends to take the vast majority of SEO budgets a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. I appreciate not all the time, but in the majority of businesses, 80% of that SEO resource is going into links and PR. Quite often, the only output for those links and PR efforts is a spreadsheet of URLs, quite often on websites that the C-suite don't even recognize. Mm-hmm. Like, there's your challenge half the time. Even just adding a few screenshots, even just showing the authority metrics versus the competition. So my C-suite clients don't need to understand what Majestic's trust flow metric is. But if they understand that we're 21 and our main competitors are 24, they understand -3. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think stuff like that. We always have a challenge in the first couple of months. Get the client a link from a publication they've heard of. Now, obviously, we're going to go like, we'd love to get a Forbes or a BBC, etc. But even like industry press. So if you're working in car leasing, there's like a fleet leasing magazines and things like that. Get them coverage in what they understand or what they read already. There's nothing better than when the C-suite says, oh, I read something about us the other day on publication Y. Brilliant. Now you understand why we're doing this. Yeah. But that spreadsheet of links, just what does it mean? Like
exactly.
Again, it's that how and why. Like I don't really care. I mean, I do, but if I put my C-suite hat on, I don't really care how you're going to get us there. I just want to know why, what are the benefits, what's it going to cost? And if I ask the questions, I'd like plain English answers. And pictures are quite often better than words, whether that's a screenshot or a graph or a comparison of us versus the competition. And ideally, if we're building authority quicker than the competition, it's nice to see us going up faster than everyone else. And again, there's plenty of tools out there that will help us develop these images. But without the C-suite buy-in, you're not going to have the budget to go and get the tools in the first place. Yeah. So just help them understand what it is that we're looking to achieve. And I think you'll certainly get more budget signed off.
Yeah. I think you mentioned it earlier. It's a case of communicating as appropriately as can be to the person you're speaking with, and the first time that takes place, usually the first year, is the hardest. But from year 2 onward, it gets a hell of a lot easier. And I find that, in fact, you'll have people on side with SEOs rather than approaching them, trying to convince them of SEO. And this leaves SEO in a business at a state where they can prevent things issues from occurring in the first place. You mentioned earlier, a lot of the SEO issues we deal with are human error, i.e. caused by non-SEOs. They're caused by non-SEOs inadvertently because they don't understand the impact of their actions to the SEO channel. And usually just explaining the impact of it resolves that issue and prevents it from occurring in the first place. So to me, the difference maker between a brand that's succeeding in the SERPs versus someone who's struggling comes down to the internal communications. There's at some point fixing issues on a site. That's just one level. Another level is fixing issues before they occur. And that has to deal with the way teams, individuals, even departments communicate with each other internally. I find that is the difference maker. Now, out of all the C-suites, CEO, CFO, COO, etc., Who would you say SEOs communicate with the best?
Yeah, I think if we think that the definition of the best could be construed in many different ways, I think quite often the COO is who that we speak to the most, because fundamentally SEO does sit as an operational activity. Mm-hmm. But I've always found that if I can get the CFO on, again, if I put my agency sales hat on for a second, if I can get the CEO is usually the least of my worries, because underneath the CEO is the CFO. And it's usually her or him that signs off my purchase order. Yeah. So if they're not understanding why we're about to take 16, 17, 18% of their annual marketing budget and effectively roll the dice on the fact that this time next year we'll be number one on Google, if that also shouldn't be your main metric for SEO, by the way, guys, being number one on Google. But if I can get the money people on board, that makes life easier. If I can get the COO on board in terms of, look, going back to the publishing content on your website to eliminate support requests, well, the COO is probably all those customer service operators are coming out of their budget. So if we can eliminate the need to hire more people in that team, all of a sudden you've got their ear. So again, it's talking the language of the C-suite that we're looking to speak to. Quite often we have CTOs in businesses these days, especially the sort of tech-focused side of stuff. They're dealing with expensive resource. Like, you make a flippant comment, oh, it'd be really, I need this. Well, that could be 8 hours of developer resource at 100 quid an hour.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, that tiny little change that you asked for has a approaching 4-figure. And let's be honest, by the time it's done and it's been spoken about and there's been a meeting about it, you're into 4 figures investment to just do anything. Mm-hmm. So without that understanding of why or what the benefit of what we're doing is going to be, it's so hard for me as a C-suite to justify the investment without seeing not necessarily the full picture, but just those right data points. And again, I've seen, look, we've been guilty of this in the past as well. Don't send the C-suite a 16-page Looker Studio report, because they're just going to go to the homepage, go to the first overview page, and then the rest is just graphs and numbers that they're not interested in. Like, we tend to make Looker, I still call it Data Studio, to be honest. I was trying to just say Looker for this podcast, but it is just called Data Studio to me. We tend to make 3 or 4 different Data Studio views for our clients. And we recommend that our internal contacts do as well, because fundamentally, the CFO just needs to know how much of the budget have you spent? Are we on track to get the return that you've told me we're going to get? And if not, what you're doing about it. I don't need reams and reams of ranking data and, we had a crawl trap because our 404 methodology wasn't working and no one was 301 in stuff. Then the server started 408 in and we didn't know what to do. Like, that accountant's just going to be like, what the bloody hell are you talking about? Have we made those sales yet? And that's what they're, like, even we have like chief commercial officers as well, where, like, you're taking my money, but I've not seen any sales back yet. And then we come at them with a 25 slide Google doc or a Google presentation about why we're not achieving the goals. Like, I stopped listening after slide 3. So I think every part of C-suite is important, but it's knowing the levers to pull for each one. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's just experience of working within the organization and maybe having I've always done really well where I've had a contact on the team, not just the CFO, but somebody in the accounts team or somebody in the financial planning team to just try and so I was trying to explain to, let's call her Linda. I don't know, I'm just picking a name. I was trying to explain to Linda why we're behind on stuff, but I'm not sure she got it. I explained it to her like this. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Or how can I get it into a shape where you understand what I'm trying to say? Then I can go and repitch it to Linda, and then she'll understand what we're trying to do here. So it's hard. It's, you've got everyone has their own goals within the business as well. So, like I say, just because it's your priority doesn't make it my priority. But if you can convince me that by doing this, I will be further along to hitting my goals, I'm probably more likely to assign you resource.
Yeah, totally. And mentioning the COO there, that is, in my opinion, the key to ensuring you have an influence within the C-suite, because they will understand, they deal with processes all the time, but they're also, they're also C-suite, so they know how to transpose operational work to the overall big picture that the CEO is after. And if you can understand the way they accomplish that, you'll be leaps ahead of the, if you like, average SEO. And I find that soft skills is also a key area for SEOs to focus on. I think we're as an industry, we're getting better with our soft skills. And of course, that naturally improves as one gets more experience. But that is, I would say, an important area for SEOs to be focusing on. What's your take on soft skills versus hard skills for SEOs?
Critically important. It's the communication side of things. And I understand, my soft skills are up and down based on my mood, I'll be honest with you. But I definitely understand the benefit of good. Look, I've got to get shit done. This person's in the way. It's social engineering. I need to convince you to do something which is going to help me and not necessarily you. That is a soft skill issue. Nothing to do with hard skills there. You can have all the knowledge in the world. You can have everything you need lined up here. But until that person opens the support ticket or sends an email to one of their reports saying you really need to help Gareth to do this, you're not going to get anywhere. And sometimes I've always found, find out how they take their coffee, and when you're going to go and ask them, take a drink with you. It really is social engineering to try and get people to do stuff for you. Really, I think we are getting better. I think SEOs are no longer the nerds in the corner, although we are still nerds and quite often sit in the corner out of the way from everyone with our headphones in, just cracking on with our work. But I think that because we are, as we said from the start, the industry is maturing, the product is maturing, the processes are probably understood a lot more. And soft skills, without soft skills, your career is going to hit a ceiling very quickly, because people buy from people. People work with people. If you can't have a common ground with someone, it's going to be difficult to try and get them on your side to do something generally above and beyond what they need to do. And again, communication. Communication is the greatest soft skill we have out there. not being the arrogant asshole that talks in acronyms, not being the I know best person. It's say your incompetence isn't my problem, but I can probably help you. Or if you've cocked up here, not me. So let's work together to fix it. And I think it's sometimes how you pitch the solution is massively affected by what the outcome ends up being. And I find sometimes, even if you can just get one member of C-suite on board, then at least, because I'm not always the best communicator, and I'm sure this will come across in the podcast in that he's repeated himself 5 times there. But if I can get my COO to understand what I'm trying to achieve, maybe they can translate it into C-suite speak, and they can go and get the buy-in that I need. And it doesn't always have to be the COO. It could also be the CTO, CFO. We also have, obviously, we have CMO a lot of the time now. So there is a marketing leader at board level. Well, I would argue it's their job to use the soft skills to go and get the buy-in from the other members of the C-suite. But if you're working in the marketing team, you're never going to get to that CMO level without having the soft skills of communication. And it could be taking your colleagues out for dinner or lunch or grabbing something in the canteen with them and just trying to communicate with them on a personal level rather than I've created a new JIRA ticket for this conversation. You what? I thought we were just having a chat. Whereas I'm more likely to help you if I know you, if I have a relationship with you. And again, that is just such a soft skill. And if somebody comes into a meeting with me and brings me a double espresso, you've got my attention.
Totally. For let's say a head of SEO or someone who's venturing into becoming a head of SEO, and they've done their research and they have some resources to improve their communication skills, but they would also like a recommendation from you. So they say, Gareth, what would you suggest I use or as in terms of a resource to improve my communication skills? What would you say to that person?
A lot of the time, and again, I'm just going off my own personal experience. I'm not suggesting everybody is in the same boat. Quite often it's confidence in communication. Sometimes just because I'm sat here in a polo shirt, I've got shorts on, I will speak to somebody that's wearing a 3-piece suit with a tie and a waistcoat, and don't be intimidated by these people. That's just their business attire. This is my business attire. Their skill set makes them think that they need to dress to impress. Well, people buy my brain, not my dress sense, luckily. So I think having a bit of self-confidence, trying to work on, and in my early days of my career, I always had a thing where that's my ex-wife now. My ex-wife was very untechnical. And to be fair, she was the yin to my yang for many, many years. But if I could explain to Caroline something or a concept or why we're trying to do something, and I can get her to understand it, I could get anyone to understand it. And that's not a slight on Caroline, by the way. She has many, many talents, but she's just not technically minded. Yeah, and my mum, I think even if you ask my mum today, she won't say that I work in SEO. She'll say I work in CEO because she just doesn't understand it. So I think if you can, and again, once you get to SEO manager, as soon as you add manager onto your job title, your job is to cross-departmental communication is a core skill, because your team are coming to you with their challenges, I think would be the right word to use. And then it's up to you as the manager to go and resolve those challenges with all the different stakeholders across the different departments of the business. Mm-hmm. If you can't stand there with confidence and get your point across, you're going to lose credibility. Yeah. And once you start to lose credibility within your even middle management peers, it's hard to get them on side in the future. And you might find that your Jira ticket just gets pushed down and down. And if you've not got the, for want of a better word, balls to go and challenge someone. So confidence is a big thing. Conflict resolution is, look, nobody wants to fight, but sometimes you've got to shout to get what you want done. And if you're not willing to fight for your team and shout with confidence and authority, people won't listen to you and they won't do what you're trying to get them to do. And I'm going to give a plug to an event, if that's okay. Sure. My good friend Kirsty Hulse runs an event called Confidence Live at confidencelive.com. And whilst it's not necessarily set up just for digital marketers or SEOs, it's all about trying to come out of your shell, looking at adversity, looking at the things around you that affect you. And if you can talk with confidence, if you can walk into that meeting with confidence and gain their attention, then you're halfway there. Now, I appreciate I'm 6'5" and about 105 kilos. I'm quite a presence in a room when I'm in the room, which helps. I will confess, it does help. But even if you talk like you know what you're talking about, that is going to get you further. If you are, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, but if you're trying to pitch your idea by saying, and then I think we might need this, and I'm not sure, but let me ask somebody. I'm panicking. You're going to lose credibility. Whereas if you go in there and say, right, guys, finance, I need this, ops, I need this, marketing, you know the benefits of this because we've already had that discussion and they already have your buy-in. Are there any other stakeholders in the business that we need on side to achieve our project goals? Just talking with that confidence, talking with that authority, people are going to listen to you and people are going to respect your viewpoint. And once you lose respect of your peers, it's hard to get back. And the knock-on effect of that is that every project you need cross-departmental help with is just going to become more and more of a challenge because you don't have, to use an SEO term, you're looking at building internal EAT. Without that experience, without that education, without that authority, and without that trust, nobody's going to do shit for you, basically.
Yeah.
And that's humans peacocking against other humans. There's nothing we can do about it. Yeah. So, work on your confidence, work on your soft skills, and just get your point across with authority, and things will happen.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Confidencelive.com. I'll have that link in the description so people can.
I would love that. And again, nothing to do with me. It's my friend Kirsty that runs it. She did it last year. It was amazing. I'm going again next year. I just think that I took two of my colleagues with me who are better than they thought they were. And now they believe they're as good as they are. And I see in how they communicate with their teammates and customers the benefit that they got from it.
Awesome. Gareth, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so my the most used social platform for me is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Gareth Hoyle. I do use Twitter, more of a voyeur these days, to be honest, which is at search_magician. I'm also on Facebook if you want. You can email me. You can find me on marketingsignals.com. We have a digital PR reporting tool called coveragely.com. If I'm honest with you, though, if you're working in search and you can't find me, well, I know I've done my job right, so I reckon it's on you. But yeah, you can find me online everywhere, to be honest.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Gareth. Have a brilliant day. We'll catch up again another time.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.